welcome everyone. Thanks for joining, and special thanks to Pragati. Thanks for being our first honor speaker. That's a great honor for us.
Pleasure.
Yeah, we thought it makes sense to have a group of users in Power BI in Athens. And most probably we're going to keep it in English. That's what we're discussing just before. Of course, in Greek also welcome. We'll see how this is going. Depends on the speakers, but our first speaker is based in UK. And yeah, just 1 minute introduction about myself, and then I will pass to you, Pragati. Maybe you can talk a bit about yourself, what you are doing, your connection with Power BI, your quite many other groups that you are attending, and yeah, your speaker experience so far. So Yannis, Kalispera, some Greek words here. Myself, I'm using Power BI for quite some years now, and currently I'm working as a marketing consultant specializing in Power BI in a company in Berlin where I'm based. I thought that makes some sense what I found useful in user groups in Berlin and Switzerland and UK as well, that I've joined sometimes, collaborating, exchanging ideas, see what other people can do using DAX or visuals or certain tricks in Power BI. That's the only way of getting to know, apart from just browsing or Googling or asking the community, the Microsoft community. I think it's quite useful. I found it useful, and I think that's the value I would like to bring to our Power BI user group. And based in Athens, I mean, most probably it will stay online, and hopefully it's adding value to everyone. So thanks everyone for joining, and Pragati, it's an honor to have you. Thanks a lot for joining us, our first speaker.
Thank you so much, Janice. Yeah, first of all, it's an absolute pleasure to be the first speaker of the user group. So thank you so much for reaching out. So I'll just quickly share my screen, and then, I'll just talk through things as I go along. So let me know if everyone can see the screen, and then, you can see the presentation deck, basically. So first of all, thank you everyone for taking out time to join this session today. I know everyone is working, and it's hard to, come together and, attend something after work hours when you have busy day. But thank you so much who all took out time to come here. So today we'll be talking about storytelling with data in Power BI. I'll also showcase in the end some of the ready reports I did last year. And, it kind of can, give you guys an idea on what kind of story you can generate when you have like a certain type of data. I mean, obviously data varies differently, story varies differently, right? But maybe I'm hoping you guys will get a little bit of idea about what kind of visuals you can use in Power BI to generate a particular story. But before we start anything, as this is me first time speaking at Athens Power BI user group, so I would just like to give a little introduction about myself. So my name is Pragati Jain. I'm based in London, United Kingdom. I'm a Microsoft Data Platform MVP, and I'm also a super user at Microsoft Power BI community, which is now Microsoft Fabric community. Actually, I should have edited that, but the Power BI part of it still says Microsoft Power BI community. So there, if you guys don't know what that community is about, I think I started contributing to that community 5 years back, because I recently received my 5th anniversary badge on the community. So I just like to, so I had a passion of, just helping people with Power BI issues, or if they're facing any challenges. And I would say Microsoft Power BI community is the place from where I learned most of the Power BI, because people on that forum or the members on that forum just, come up with like different use cases where they really want to, get a solution. And then you can actually go and paste a solution. Now there could be multiple solutions, whichever they want to adapt, because multiple people can answer to a same question, right? But trust me, it's a great place, and you learn a lot on that community. So if you haven't joined it, go and join that community. Then about myself, I am in this industry for now nearly 15 years, and most of my experiences within analytics, but I started my career a few years back as a database developer. Then I eventually moved into analytics because obviously we had kind of data everywhere and people were doing a lot with data. So I thought it looks like a nice career and it would never end. So I just moved to analytics like 8 years back. And currently I'm working as analytics manager at Avanade here in London. And apart from that, I do a lot of speaking. I am also organizer of Data Weekender conference. Actually, Janice, if you can remind me in the end, we have the CFS open for the Data Weekender conference, which is happening on 5th of November. So I would just like to put that link in the chat. So whether you're a new speaker, experienced speaker, doesn't matter. You are welcome to submit a session there. And it will be like a whole day conference where we'll be, say, running parallel 5 tracks. And yeah, there will be too much learning and fun. And apart from that, I also manage Microsoft Fabric UK user group alongside my co-host Leon Gordon. So that's what I do outside the community, outside my work. And yeah, apart from that, one fun fact about me is like I'm a painter as well. So I just like to call myself a techie artist. Yeah, obviously, when I get time, I do this, not every time. But yeah, I like to spend some time with colors and creativity.
Looks good.
And oh, thank you. If any of you guys want to connect with me on social media platform, I'll share this deck. I've got my own blog. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. As I said, I'm on Microsoft Power BI community. And I also have my YouTube channel, which is not getting that much love from me from last few years, but definitely my blog is the place where I try to, write timely some kind of articles, or say I faced a challenge at client side, got a solution, I turned it into a blog and put it onto my blog basically. So yeah, more than happy to connect with you guys on these places. Okay. So I'm not sure if you guys have attended my previous sessions before, but whenever I deliver something, I lay a base, like I just want my audience to know what they're going to learn in today's, 1 hour session. So in today's session, we have a very simple agenda laid out. I'll be actually picking up a public data set, which is the global CO2 emissions. And today we'll try to find out some kind of insights within that data using Microsoft Power BI tool. And then we'll see how we can, generate some kind of story in there. But yeah, it will completely depend on the time we have got. But in the end, I will also showcase some of the ready Power BI report, which will kind of, give you some idea around how the story can be generated in Power BI. So the only thing I'm expecting is like people who are attending the session today have a little bit, it could be beginner level experience with Microsoft Power BI. But if not, that's fine. Power BI is easy, so you can learn it. So before going to the next slide, that will be something I'll show a little later. I'll also show you some of the best practices that one should follow while visualizing the data in any visualization tool. But that is something we'll go a little later. But I'll switch my window and we'll go to Power BI directly. So let me get. Okay. So you all can see my Power BI window, right?
Yes.
Okay, let me also move Teams on the other side. So if there is any chat, and yeah, guys, while we are going through this, if you guys have any questions, then yeah, maybe Janice, we can take the questions. So first, what I'll show you is, this is the main Power BI window. Yeah, there are some tabs I was just playing around before the session. But yeah, this is Microsoft Power BI Desktop. It is a free tool. You can download it completely free. It doesn't cost you. And you can start bringing your data and start playing around with the data on this tool. Now, just to save some time, what I did was I actually got the data into Power BI. Because as this is not a beginner Power BI session, it is more about once you get data into Power BI, how you convert that data into insights, right? So that's why I did the first part of it. I got the data already into my Power BI desktop file. So these are just, as I said, it's a public data set. It's available online. And suppose if you guys, I'll also put a link to this, 1 second, this data actually. So it's in one of my, so I have posted this data story on one of my blogs. And there it kind of gives details on from where the data is taken. So I'm just pasting that link in the chat in case you guys want to play around with that public data set. It's free, anyone can pick it up and use it. So this report was created as part of very much learning and trying to create like a template for visualizing data into Power BI. So I just took that as and thought I'll talk through about it. Now, if you see this data, let's go to country emissions. I've got two data sets there. If you go to the public data set, they will have a single data set, which you'll get to download, but I just did split it into two. And from somewhere, I got the demographic information as well from the same website. But I can share this PBIX file with the data files as well with Janice if you guys want to play around with this. This is pretty clean data. I've cleaned it. I've done so much on this already. So it is like in a good shape to start doing things in Power BI. So if you see this data set, so the first file, which is countries emission, you can see against different year, you can see here, there is a type of emission, whether it is coming from cement or CO2 or consumption or flaring or gas. I have simplified that, which I'll show you. So it's the type of emission. And then you can see what emission has been caused in, say, different countries, which you can see here. And yeah, this is the emission type, which I kind of created in Power BI to simplify this attribute. Because one key thing, whenever you're trying to generate a story in Power BI, you need to make sure that you simplify the data points to the users. Not every user will be able to understand what is cement underscore CO2, what is CO2 underscore growth, or say what is coal underscore CO2, right? So what I did was I just simplified this attribute into a CO2 emission type. And obviously you'll see there are two levels, like you can see cement, coal, consumption, flaring, gas, oil, trade. But there is one thing called other and one thing called unknown. Now CO2 emissions can occur from multiple. So CO2 emissions can be of multiple types. I'm only considering cement, coal, consumption, flaring, gas, oil, and trade. Other takes into account all the remaining part of CO2 emissions. And unknown is something where that is kind of a category which is not CO2 emissions. Basically, it's a non-CO2 emission. So that's the kind of categorization I did. But I'm sure you can simplify it and it can be tweaked based on what you really want to do. But I just created like a simple categorical level to simplify my data point, basically. So that's the simple data there. And yeah, you'll see some measures here. We'll go through them, quick one. And then there I have got another data set where I have got some kind of demographics information. This file also I got from the same place from where I got the CO2 emissions data. There are many columns which are literally of no use to me, but the main thing here is I've got some demographic information like country name against which region they are mapped to. That's what, because I had something in my mind that I want to show on my report how CO2 emissions are coming from different parts of the world, right? So I wanted some kind of demographic information to link it back to my actual CO2 emissions. So you can see there's an ISO2 code here as well. And if we go back to the previous data set, there is an ISO code as well. So this is just the basics about the data. Ignore this year filter. I don't know why it's there. I also don't remember, but yeah, we'll ignore it. We'll just see these two data files. And then in Power BI comes the modeling part. It's a very simple model, very simple. So basically countries is my dimension table and it's filtering my country emissions, which is based, oh, this is broken. Which is basically my fact table, because so fact tables and dimension tables, if you're coming from the data warehouse or database background, you'll understand that. So dimension table is basically something which has just got like, say, in simple terms, should I say it has just got like some kind of text mapping or text information. Like for example, in my countries, I just have country name and their region. But in countries emission, I actually have multiple rows for every country with different kind of emissions. So that's my fact table because it has got numeric attributes in it against those countries which I have got in my dimension table. But we'll not go into data model. This is not a data modeling session, but it's very simple in this case. I'm just trying to show that. So we have seen the data. Let's go to our visualization tab. Now, when I showed you the data, first thing, we saw some attributes like, for example, year. We have year against which we have got different country names. And we know we have got CO2 emissions. So whenever I see this kind of data, the first thing what I do is I just drag and drop things. Now in Power BI, if you go, okay, let's just see quick measures. If you guys have already worked with Power BI, for example, total CO2 emission. Sorry, my bad. I'll make this bigger. So this is just a very simple measure when I'm summing my country's emission value column just to get the total emissions. This is the metric we'll use at most of the places today. Ignore the other ones. So let's see and start doing. Oh, what did I do? Okay. So let's drag and drop some stuff. For example, I'll move the year. And against every year, say I want to have total CO2 emission. Now Power BI by default gave me something this. Okay, that's fine. It actually gave me this clustered column chart. That's fine. But let's see how this has been. Now, when it comes to representing data over time, or say you want to see some kind of distributions by year, I really feel line chart makes things more easier. So for example, actually this did it wrong. It should be this way, right? So over the year, I can see what CO2 emissions I have. So suppose I convert this to line chart, or say I convert this to area chart. I have, yeah, I mean, it looks at my, I mean, I can understand that in a better way somehow, line chart in this way. I can see how my CO2 emissions have been over different years, right? But now let's start digging into some other elements. Okay, this tells me something. Okay, I can see how my CO2 emissions have been. It has been literally growing, and I would expect it to grow, right? Because most of the countries are developing, they are doing different things. They're reaching on Mars, they're reaching on Moon. So yeah, they will do all kinds of CO2 emissions, right? We expect them to be doing all that progress, but parallelly they're doing all this to harm to the environment as well. So you can see, ignore the 2020 data, guys, because 2020 data is not complete in this public data set, but we look everything till 2019. But yeah, it's growing, we know that. But what else? Okay, it's growing. But what if I take this chart? Okay, in Power BI, you can do a Control C and Control V, like on a Windows machine. So I have a Windows machine, I did a Control C. I do a Control V, I get that chart pasted. So I just don't want to spend time in creating another chart, because sometimes it happens. You create a chart with a proper naming, color coding, or say data formats and everything, and you don't want to do that again on a new chart, right? So copy pasting works. Trust me, it's the best. It's the, I think, thing that I do most, copy and pasting stuff in Power BI. So let's take this chart. What if now in this chart, first of all, I move, say, country name. So you'll see a few things in my data. You'll see my name column, which is my country name column. It has got a globe icon against it. So if you guys have worked in Power BI, you can actually give a data category to your columns in Power BI. For example, if I go to name, at the top, I can see I've given it a country kind of data category, because I know that column contains country name. This just helps Power BI to map things on a map visual. So if you don't have that, it's fine, but sometimes your map visuals might not give you right results. So as a best practice, make sure your demographic information is categorized properly in Power BI. It just eases with the stuff you're doing. So that's what I've done. And what I'll do is let's just move country here to say legend. Okay, that doesn't look good. I've got so many lines because I've got so many countries, right? But let's do a little tweak here. What if I convert it to, say, a clustered column chart? And I'll move the year for now. I'll remove the year for now, and I'll move the name to x-axis. Now, this chart suddenly kind of gives me another level of insight. It might not be right. I'm not saying this is 100% right, but it still gives me some kind of insight that I can at least see which country is producing most of the CO2 emissions based on the data set I'm working on. So see, whenever I use public data sets, the line that I always add is based on the data set I am using, I can see United States is producing most of the CO2 emissions. In reality, it could be China. Actually, I would have expected China to produce more because of more population and other stuff, but it's fine. The data set we are working on gives us this. But what's really used, now in this chart, you have got all the countries, right? You have got like a big scroller, right? No one is going to look at these countries, right? Because their CO2 emission is like nearly to none when compared to these big countries. Why not we apply some kind of filtering here? Ignore some of the filter on all pages I have put in because it was more from the data cleaning side, like what kind of information I wanted to be represented. That's why it's there. But suppose in this chart, I just want to get top 10 countries with the most CO2 emissions. So in Power BI, you are in this visual, okay? I'm in the focus mode. I want the top 5 countries, top 5 countries, which is my name. Actually, one of the best practice, always rename or, make sure you're giving the right naming convention to the columns or metrics you're moving to the chart. It just helps when, user is, say, hovering or, getting some additional information. Now here, what I want is I want top 10 countries. So I'll simply apply a top 10. And I want this based on the total CO2 emission. So I'll move my total CO2 emission measure here, apply filter, boom. My chart just shows me top 10 countries with the most CO2 emission. So this is like a clearer insight for me rather than having my, say, all 200 countries on the chart, right? So one thing which I always think is, as a Power BI developer, you have a responsibility to make sure things are simplified on your Power BI report. Because people are always used to seeing, say, tables, right? People who are coming from Excel background, they see all these tables all the time, right? For example, they've got year, they've got country, they've got CO2 emissions. They see all these tables every time. And why would they need Power BI or why they really are going for this? So make sure you're giving them something different from this. Because if you end up giving them the table visuals again, you're not giving them something different. They can do that in Excel. Obviously, there are cases like, for example, when you do financial reportings, you have to go with tables and matrices because that's the requirement on those kind of reports. But when you're not doing something like that, make sure you're trying to generate insights with different kind of visual elements. So I'll remove this because I don't want it. So yeah, this is like one of the very simple case, like how you can simplify information on the chart rather than having those 300 countries on the chart. We only gave user the right information, like say top 10 countries with the most CO2 emissions. Now, if you remember in the data that we were looking at, we had something like CO2 type. Oh, where was that? Oh yeah, CO2 emission type, right? Now let's see which CO2 emission type is actually contributing to the most part of CO2 emissions. So again, you can actually use the same chart, Control C, Control V. And what I'll literally do is I'll just change little, data updates here basically. So for example, we want this distribution to be by CO2 emission type, right? So I'll move that. I'll remove the country. I don't want that. So, and let's remove unknown, because unknown, if you remember, I said in the starting, is the category which I just categorized everything else, which is not the type of, which is not, CO2 emission type. So what I'll do is I'll just select everything and just remove unknown. So we get a clear picture actually. So if you see the data, we are just talking about CO2 emissions. Again, repeating that, we can clearly see that consumption is causing the most CO2 emission in the data set that we are trying to find insights. You can change these charts. You can go to donut chart if you like donut charts and pie charts. But yeah, I'm not a very big fan of donut chart and pie chart until and unless the categories are, say, maximum 3. Though you will question that to me when I'll show you my ready remote, because I have actually got a donut chart similar looking on that report, which I never went back and changed. But yeah, I mean, always think about when you're putting a pie chart or donut chart there in front of the user. Is it really making sense? Or for example, say if you just put like a simple this thing, will that work? Or say if you work and use this decomposition chart. I really like this chart. So see, this is my total CO2 emission. I make it distributed by CO2 emission type. It kind of really tells me a good thing. I mean, I use decomposition chart so many times, because along with showing me a distribution, it also kind of shows me a data bar kind of thing going, right? And I mean, just seeing at that, I can actually measure it. Like, for example, I can see, okay, coal is a little bit less when compared to consumption than oil. I mean, somehow it just, is a better insight for my eyes, or better visual representation for my eyes. Though I will totally agree, everyone will have their own views on the visualization types, but I really like to use decomposition chart because of this reason. I'll show it to you on the report how I literally used it at different levels as well, and it kind of gives pretty good insight as well. Similarly, I mean, obviously, I mean, that's what you know storytelling in Power BI is, right? I mean, you get the data, you start bringing the data together. I mean, you'll never get a report done in the first time. It takes few iterations to generate the right insight, generate the right story, right? So yeah, it's more about just exploring the data, but make sure following some of the best practices, right? Similarly, like in Power BI, I'll just duplicate this page and remove some charts. Now, say if we want to visualize something demographically, right? So for example, I can get a map here. There are so many map visuals available. Let's go and get the normal map. And now see, what I really want is, I want my total CO2 emissions. Okay, let's keep it a little later. My bad. I'll put the name first, which is my location. And what I really want to see is, I want to see how my CO2 emissions have been coming from different demographics, right? So I'll move my total CO2 emissions to bubble size. So the moment you do that, you can clearly see United States has got the biggest bubble, and yeah, so on, followed by China, which we had on a top 5 bar chart, if you remember, Russia, India, Japan. Oh, India, yeah, India, Japan, right? So yeah, you can see those kind of things going on. And yeah, I mean, if you want to make things little bit nicer or with some color kind of things, then in Power BI, you can actually go and do some kind of conditional formatting. Now, I'll say that conditional formatting is the favorite part of my job in Power BI, and not the default formatting. I really like to break the conditional formatting and get it done using measures. I mean, I've actually got pretty good blogs around the conditional formatting hacks on the Power BI community, I remember. And it's the favorite thing. Give me a conditional formatting challenge, I'll get it done somehow in Power BI. So for example, let's just quickly do it. Like, for example, I want to somehow color code my bubbles on the map, right? Not just having blue kind of thing. And obviously you can change the map settings here as well. For example, dark. If you like dark colors, you can go with dark. You can go with whatever option you want, but let's stay with the default one. And let's see if some conditional formatting can work here. So what I'll do is I'll just do a normal gradient, and it will be based, I want my conditional formatting to work based on CO2 emissions, right? So I'll grab my measure, and yeah, you can have just two colors, like for example, now for me, having minimum CO2 emission is a good news, is a positive thing, right? So I would like to put it green, because I know generally the global convention is anything low is red and high is green, right? But in this case, it has to be other way around, right? If my CO2 emission is less, it has to be green because it is a good news, right? It's a positive thing. So we choose the color that way, right? So for example, yeah, apologies, I'm not choosing the exact red and green color, but yeah, I think it will work for this. And you can add a middle color if you want, like, yeah, here we won't see that kind of differentiation because our highest ones are highest and lowest ones are lowest because they have got very similar kind of numbers. But you can go and add, say, a middle kind of color in between, something like amber if you like. And yeah, and maybe let's see if this changes. But yeah, it's just a way of showing, like, how you can enhance your visuals rather than showing some kind of, plain visuals in Power BI. You can actually play around with it. And conditional formatting or icon formatting in Power BI is one of those that allows you to, do those kind of experiments. And like that's what my approach is. Whenever I do the reports, it's more like I talk so regularly with the users who are going to use the report, understand, their kind of requirements on how they would like to interact with the report. So one good thing in Power BI, I mean, obviously, if you guys are experienced, you can select something and the report is pretty interactive, right? You select a data point and every other visual on the same page will get filtered. So that's another thing you can add. Like, for example, I've seen some reports where, say, on the single page, say they have 5 visuals and say they have got 10 slicers on the page. Now, rather than having those 10 slicer, you could have done something like this. Because sometimes what happens is you have a slicer for Germany, like for example, I've got slicer for Germany here. It might not be exact right example, but yeah, let's see. So this is my country. And just to save space, basically, I can actually do this, right? But suppose if I have got scenarios where I have got already charts having that kind of data point, then I can actually eliminate my slicer and use those data points to filter my whole report. Like, for example, okay, country is not the best example here, but maybe year could be. So for example, on the left chart, yeah, we don't have year again. Sorry, my bad again. Let's take something else. But I'm just trying to show here, like, there could be ways where sometimes you'll have to, remove your slicers and use your visuals to interact with your report. For example, CO2 emission time. Okay, let's take something like this. And say if I had this chart and say it was a bar chart or something, and say I had something like this, right? And now I have a slicer as well, right? But suppose I already have some information that's being represented at CO2 emission type level. I can actually ignore that slicer and turn my report to interact using this particular visual, right? So in that way, I can actually end up minimizing the number of slices on the report, because there are reports where people actually end up having, like, say, 10 or 15 slicers. But there are ways you can actually improvise your report, because having so much on a single page can be sometimes confusing for the user. So we need to make sure, as I said, it's our responsibility to make things and information easier for the user, not confusing or, messing with a lot of clutter on the report. We need to make it very clear and precise. So there could be ways where you can actually avoid slicers and make sure you train them properly to show them how the reports interact in Power BI. So that could be another one thing to, remember, I guess. So, Janice, till when I have time? I mean, how much time?
Yeah, no, please go on.
Okay.
As long as people are fine
Okay.
joining us, please raise also your questions in the meantime.
Yeah. I mean, if you guys have any questions, go ahead. I mean, I'm always, I'm always a learner. So if I'm saying something wrong, just cross question me and tell me what is the right way to do things. Okay. So it is more like not just me showing you things, because if you guys, because I know people do amazing things which which we are not aware of. So if you have done something similar and say you have a different thinking on that particular point that I'm talking about, then please feel free to share with us, because it will just help us in, sharing knowledge with each other. So yeah, just ask questions, just put your comments there. Okay, so now what I'll do is I'll go back to my presentation, because I can actually go on and talk about storytelling with this data a lot, but I want to show you guys a few more things. So I'll switch back to my presentation. And what we'll do is, go to presentation mode again. Oh, why it starts from beginning? That's okay. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I would like to show you guys some kind of best practices I have learned over the last few years while designing different Power BI reports. So one thing what I'm very, big supporter of is adding summary to your data reports, adds a very, different way the user sees your report. So for example, this is one of the report I again did using a public data set. And this is basically the landing page. So whenever user goes to this report, they will land to this page. And on this page, I have kind of got some kind of information. Like, for example, if you see on the left, I have laid some kind of foundation for the user. So like, for example, the date range for which I am analyzing the data, and say data is analyzed just for 46 countries, not like for 300 countries. Then the metrics that I'm analyzing on this report is oil production, oil consumption, and oil reserves. Then on the right, I've got some kind of top 5 statistics for the user. So like, for example, top 5 countries with the oil reserves, top 5 countries with the oil production, and top 5 countries with the oil consumption. And then I've got some kind of navigation buttons for the users to navigate to the respective section for the insight. So I really feel like this landing page, which is something, you can use as a report creator to give users a foundation, because not every user who will be your report user will understand the data very well. So you have to be very careful about that. Your report should be something not just for the users who know everything, but for the users who literally don't know much about what this analysis or what this story is about. So this approach I have followed at multiple places, and it has been really received very well with the clients. And I really feel like this is a very good way to, very good thing to add on your Power BI reports. Similarly, now, I think this is something I already discussed. Now, there are most of us who are used to seeing these tables, right? And when we are doing things in Power BI, we need to make sure we are minimizing the numbers on the visuals, right? We have to somehow make it more appealing, like, for example, some kind of trends, or say, as I said, conditional formatting. Like, for example, on this chart, you can clearly see Russia has improved on their CO2 emissions. I know they haven't improved much, but still there's an improvement because they went from red to orange, right? So those kind of things give you a precise insight the moment the user sees it, right? And similarly, for example, on this left chart, when I compared CO2 emissions of 2019 versus 2020, Russia seems to be the highest one. So those kind of color formatting or conditional formatting on report can really tell user like some kind of precise information. So rather than going everywhere, they just land on the page, and then they it just clicks to them. Okay, what's really happening here, right? So always make sure you show less numbers to the users, but more visuals to the users, because somehow a human body reacts easily to the visuals rather than more numbers. I mean, at least my mind doesn't work if I see so many numbers, but when I see the visuals, I get to understand it pretty easily and clearly. Similarly, if we go, I have seen reports like this, where people actually get a lot of stuff on that. I know there are not many charts, there are just 6 charts, but if you see the colors, there is too much for me. I mean, I just can't relate why there are so many colors here, but what's the use of it? And this donut chart is something literally my mind can't read, right? So that's what I mentioned before. Like, I think we should always avoid clutter and make sure we have precise information, uniform information. And suppose if you're using some kind of color coding, make sure that color coding is uniform across your report as well. So for example, if you have used like say green color for say production, then make sure that green color defines production on your report, not oil reserves or not oil consumption. So make sure that kind of uniformity is on your report. So have less things, have less insight, have less charts, but make sure they are good enough for the user to understand everything. There's no point in having 10 charts on a page where user will just go and get, confused about things. Then one of the other thing what I really like is, yeah, this report is not very good example. It was old report, but the only thing I want to add here is add commentary wherever possible. So for example, if I'm a new user, I really don't know, like if I need to hover over the bar and will it give me any information? So for example, on this particular chart, I went and wrote a commentary like hover over the bars to view artist level details. So whenever the user hover over a bar, they see a drill through option coming through, and then they can go into that artist level detail. So adding that kind of commentary helps you to set a flow on your report page, along with helps users to understand how you really want them to navigate through your page. Because as I said earlier, not every user will be used to using Power BI. They might be coming from Tableau World or say ClickSense World, and they're just using your first Power BI report. So again, making life easier for them, right? So we do everything we can. This page is definitely not a great example because it has got too much going on, but just wanted to highlight that how a commentary can help users to navigate properly to your report. Then the another thing what I really like to mention is like make sure you use standard colors. Now, for example, this visual here, it kind of tells me like how my CO2 emissions have evolved over last 10 years for all the countries that I have here on the left, right? Russia, Germany, and yeah, and so on. But I have got some kind of purplish color coding on it, might be blue for a few people. But it doesn't tell me anything, right? Because I don't have a label here telling me whether light color is a good indication or dark color is a good indication, right? But the moment I change this chart to something else, then as I was talking earlier, red and green, they are something to which our mind responds pretty quickly, right? Like, I mean, when the signal or the traffic light turns red, we stop. When it is green, we move, right? So we have that inbuilt mind tuned in the human body, right? That what is red and what is green. Obviously, red is bad, right? So you can clearly see Russia had pretty bad CO2 emissions in 2010. But over the time, it's improving. So like in 2020, it went to orange. So it is a better indicator. For example, for Germany, it started with amber, yellow color or orange color, but it went towards green. So it is a good news, right? So using those standard colors make things simple. Basically, you don't have to put additional effort to make your users understand what that really means. They will instantly understand what this is telling them. So use of standard colors, a very big yes to that. Make sure you do that as part of your reports. Then, yeah, I really like using icons and indicators. Now, I'm not sure how much accessibility based reports you guys might have created. So I have worked on one of the accessibility reports in the last few years. And obviously, when it comes to accessibility, the colors which I showed in the previous slide could be confusing to people, right? Because as I said, this purple could be blue to someone else, which is purple for me, right? Or it could be white to someone else, but it is little blue for me. So when those kind of challenges are coming, or if you're trying to design reports to keep these things in mind, like a report which could be used by everyone, right? So make sure in that case you use indicators or icons, because indicators and icons are better than these conditional formatting things, because these color differences might not be interpreted by everyone who's using your report, but indicators and icons will be clearly interpreted by them. So make sure if you are working on a report and you think like, no, I really want my report to be something like everyone should use, then, it's a very good thing to, adopt some of the best practices from accessibility point of view. So that should be something always in your mind as a report designer. Then yeah, add tooltips. Oh yeah, adding tooltips is something I use all the time. When I want to give more information to the users, but I have got so much limitation on my page, I just add custom tooltips. I'll show you this report. It has got pretty good tooltips, which gives like additional information. But yeah, tooltips they just minimize number of visuals on your report and they just add additional information on your report. So yeah, tooltips is a big win on a Power BI report, giving additional insights to the users. Then yeah, one thing also what I generally do is like whenever users say navigates to a page, like for example, this is a oil reserves page, I generally write some kind of key insights at the top, because on this page, you'll just see I've got 3 maps, which just shows like oil reserves by country, oil production by country, oil consumption by country. But at the top, I just give them some kind of high level insights, like how my oil reserves have been doing across all the countries, how they have been doing across all the countries in respect to production, consumption, and reserves. So I really like doing that key insights, and you can definitely automate these key insights by narrative visual in Power BI, right? So it could be dynamic as well. So it's always a good thing to tell that, because not, as I said, not every user will understand what you're trying to show them, or trying to tell them as a story. So it's always good to give them some additional idea around what you're trying to tell them, what story you're telling them, what insights you found on this page. So yeah, I use this key insights a lot many times just to simplify information on the page. And yeah, after this, I think we can go through a few of the reports, which I would really like to show. Where is my report gone? Sorry. Yeah, I've got that open. You guys can actually visit my blog if in case you want to have some kind of, if you like, so my blogs are not like tutorials, they're more like tips and tricks. I end up into a problem and I write a blog out of it. So that's what my blogging is about. It's not about tutorials, because I know there are already amazing people in the community doing that. And I don't want to do that because they're already doing it great. So yeah, let's go to this one of the report I wanted to show. I hope everyone can see that.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is again the Global CO2 Emission Analysis Report. It uses the exact same data set that I was showing in the Power BI desktop file earlier. So yeah, this report didn't take me a day. It took me a month to get it to this level, because every day I used to see the report, make some changes, get some feedback from some fellow friends or fellow workers at Avanade, and they kind of told me, oh, no, this doesn't look right, or you don't need labels, or you don't need access. So this report went through so many iterations. There are so many details on this report, which I've changed like over the period of a month. So yeah, definitely it's not a one-day job. It takes us time. So that's why I always say when you design something, ask for feedback. And it's not like you need to go to your peer workers. You can actually go to anyone in the community. I generally share my reports to anyone in the community and tell them, can you please give a feedback on the report? And I always get a positive feedback, and they'll always tell me to improve things. So yeah, just reach out to people. People are great in the community. They'll be happy to help you. So for example, on this report, you can clearly see on the top left, I've got, as I said, I am a key believer in writing some kind of summary points. So it clearly tells user like, okay, first thing on the report, wherever I have got some kind of commentary or some kind of instructions, I have used yellow color. So when I talked about uniform colors, this is what I was talking about. For example, from 1920 to 2020, my CO2 emission unit is billion tons. All the instructions to the user is in yellow. There is a note at the bottom telling people, okay, my emission type considers this, and this is what my current categorization is. So that's what I was talking about, color consistency. Now, yeah, I know there is not color consistency on this chart, but yeah, there was a reason for it. So if we start with this, you can see on the left, you can see global CO2 emissions by different regions or countries. Then here you can see emissions over time. I tried to use the spark lines. I remember spark lines came sometimes last year, or maybe I may be wrong. It came way before that, but I got time to test it later. So I used the spark lines there. So I tried using the spark lines as line chart, but in my case, they were not giving me any insight. So I ended up using them as bars here. So for example, this doesn't tell me much information, so I ended up adding tooltip here. So I hover over it, it tells me what is going on in United States actually. So this is where I like using tooltips. I have this simple table with my spark lines, but still, when users hover over it, hover over trend lines for more details, they'll get more details there, right? So that's where tooltips work. Similarly, if you see the bottom line chart, it just shows normal CO2 emissions over time. But when I hover over a particular year, it kind of tells me the top 5 countries that contributed to CO2 emissions in that particular year. Now I'll tell you an insight that I found on this chart after adding this tooltip. So if you see I think till 2000, or yeah, I think I have to be a little slow here, but 2002, 2003, oh yeah. So India and, okay, so 2002, 2003, 2004. Okay, cool. So till 2004, you see the top 5 countries contributing to total CO2 emissions have been United States, China, Japan, Russia, and Germany. The moment I moved to 2005, oh, I clicked it, my bad. You see, Germany is not in the top 5 list. India made it through the top 5 list. So India is really doing something bad there. They increased their CO2 emissions from 2005. And if you go further down the line, India was on 5th position. Now it is on 3rd position in 2011. So India is really doing something bad. They need to control their CO2 emissions. So this insight, honestly, guys, I found after adding this tooltip. Before that, I literally didn't know what was going in this data. So adding tooltips, yeah, gives additional information, but can also help you tell additional insight to the user. So this was something I found out after doing this. Yeah, donut chart. As I said, yeah, I said I'm not a person who likes donut chart, but yeah, here I added a donut chart, and I will definitely change it. So yeah, it doesn't help me here when I've got very small distributions, but yeah, it's just telling you distributions of like what kind of emission type has contributed to CO2 emissions most. You can clearly see coal in this case. Oh, sorry, consumption in this case. So that's how it is. Decomposition chart. Now this is what I like on this report. So you can clearly see at first step, at first level, my emissions are split by my regions. And for every other region, I can see a split on what countries have been, contributing to different kind of CO2 emission type. So you can see, yeah, CO2 emission type for that region. Like for Europe and Central, you can see coal is the biggest one. For East Asia Pacific, yeah. So that's how you can see that distribution going on. So I like this chart. And then I have got drill throughs on the report going on. So for example, if I want to go and see, now someone is just looking at, okay, US is the biggest one with most CO2 emission, but what's really going on there, right? So I've given users a drill through. They can go to the country specific information and they can see what is going on with the United States, why it is really generating that much CO2 emissions. So again, you can see a little bit of insight here, like how the CO2 emissions have been last 50 years for United States. Now, this could have been a simple line chart. Just to give it a little bit visual factor, I made it step layout chart just to make it look a little different. But it's up to you how you really want to do that. But yeah, that's how I did this here. And even on the right, you can see like how the CO2 emissions have been by different emission type over last 10 years. Again, my conditional formatting again tells you by yourself like red is bad and green is good. So that's how you can differentiate. Then this chart is something I really like where I try to get year-on-year emission growth rate over last 50 years for United States. Now, something really happened in 1990 where every other country has got a peak. But if you see in this chart, you can see like United States is trying to improve their CO2 emissions. They're trying to control their CO2 emissions. So obviously it's not a positive news, but I mean, it's not a perfect news for us, but at least they are moving in the right direction, right? So I just thought of getting that growth chart here. Similarly, you can, even if you go to the decomposition chart here, you can drill at different region level. Unfortunately, decomposition chart doesn't follow the modern visual tooltip thing. So you have to still right click. But I still like this drill through at a region level, because now at a region level, I can actually see which 5 countries within that region are contributing most to the CO2 emissions. So for example, Europe and Central Asia, I can see these 5 countries are coming through. Yeah, I think this is, yeah, guys, don't do this. This is the wrong chart. You should never use pie split on a map. I think I should change this as well. Revisiting this report after some time. What I really did was, like, for every other country on this map, I split them by different CO2 emission type. And it really doesn't help me because all of my pies are nearly same, right? So this is the bad practice. Don't do it. I'll have to change it. So yeah, never do this. Then on the right, again, I can see year-on-year emission growth rate for my top 10 countries. So yeah, as I was talking about 1990, something was really going in that year in 1990. So you see a peak for every other country there. And then if you see over time, few countries are trying to control their CO2 emissions. So not completely zero, but yeah, they're trying to do something. Similarly, on the left-hand chart, you can clearly see how much CO2 emissions have been for all the countries within this region when compared to 2020 and 2019. So you can see Russia is doing worst, then Germany, and then, yeah, I think Latvia or Slovenia is the country with the best one. But I would say it could be because of population, right? I haven't done a population level analysis on this report, which I would really like to do something someday, because that might just turn down or, just take a different or just show me a different level of insight. So that's what something I would really do sometime in future, like take somehow into account the population of the countries and then try to analyze this report, because I may just end up with something different. Like maybe Bulgaria is not doing that great. They might have something bad happening there. But yeah, this is what I just did at a basic level. And similarly, the evolution of CO2 emission over the last 10 years, so you can clearly see how different countries have been doing and how they have been, good in controlling some of their emissions. So yeah, that was that one of the report I wanted to show. And the other one which I showed in the deck was this report where I talked about more on the oil production, oil consumption, and oil reserves. And this is where I was using the commentary and some kind of basic information. So when user lands on this page, this is what they land on. And then from here, they can actually go to different kind of analysis like oil reserves. And from here also, they can navigate to production. And actually, I should have renamed it to reserves. Not sure why I did it country. But yeah, I think one of the nice chart I like here is this one. This chart actually gave me an insight. 1 second. Saudi Arabia is good with oil reserves, then come in Russia. I think there was a country, yeah, Venezuela. Just keep an eye on Venezuela. It will just increase because I'm not sure how that happened. Like Saudi Arabia, they have got good oil reserves, right? So I would expect them to do that. But like Russia, Venezuela, I really don't know how they're producing or creating those oil reserves and producing that oil reserve, right? So yeah, this play axis helped me think about few things. What's really happening in the data? Is the data right or is the data wrong? But yeah, so, basically the only thing I would say is, try to play around with the data because you never know what you may end up with. Like I showed you that tooltip on my previous report, I literally didn't know Germany was in top 5 countries and then that place was taken over by India in 2005 and then India moved from 5th place to 3rd place, which is really bad for them. And similarly here, I really don't know how can Venezuela come here because they don't have that many big oil reserves like Saudi Arabia, right? But what is really happening here is something going bad. And see, United States, how can they be the one of the most biggest oil production country? They don't have any oil reserve, right? So they might be getting it from somewhere, right? So those kind of insights are something, I like to find. So I play around with the visuals. I tweak them. It could be wrong, it could be right, but it just helps me in understanding the data I'm working on. So I think, guys, that's it I have. And yeah, thank you for taking out time. And hopefully the session was helpful and you guys learned something. The only thing I would do is if you can scan this barcode and I can paste the link as well, it will be really good to get some kind of feedback. So, I can improve my sessions in future. So it just, yeah, helps me to understand whether I did the justice with my job here. Or if not, I'll improve it. So yeah, write your comments, what I can improve in the presentation, what else could have been improved. And the only thing, Janice, before handing it over to you, I would just like to tell you guys that we have got CFS open for Data Weekender. Maybe Janice, this could be something for you as well. If you want to go ahead and submit the session. So yeah. So our CFS is open and yeah, we welcome all kind of sessions. So you don't have to be an experienced speaker, as I said, because we always support new speakers and we always promote them every year. So if you are a new speaker and you want to start your journey like New Stars of Data does, Data Weekender is a very big fan of new speakers and we have given, and we are proud to say like we have actually given platform to many new speakers in last 2 years. So just go ahead and submit your sessions there, and then yeah, we'll see you in November when we are going to conduct the conference. So I think that's it from me, Janice. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Amazing. Thank you. Very nice presentation, very insightful. I hope everyone enjoyed.